just can record it. Anish?
Someone cut. Perfect. Perfect. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity. I think um, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you all today. And I think wherever um, you are, I'm not sure if all of you are currently in Mumbai. I hope you're all staying safe and are doing well. I'm gonna quickly run you through some of the thoughts that I've been sharing with um, industry academicians and academias or students at large. And I would be more than happy to take any questions through these sessions. So, can someone confirm that you are able to see the screen?
Yes, sir, we can see the presentation.
Perfect. So, I think if you really look at what we are going through in the last several months, especially given the COVID environment and COVID times, we've been going through a massive disruption, and some of it is something that I'm going to cover today, and also some details on the element of what's changing from a workforce standpoint, as well as how is gig economy or what we called as also call as passion economy is going to evolve through. It's already there in India. It's just going to continue to grow, and how you all can adapt yourselves to be able to make yourselves into a better gig professional is something that we can talk through as well today, right? So I think if you would have asked this question 6 months ago to anyone of what is COVID, people would have said, oh yeah, it's only a regional problem. Few countries have it. We don't really need to worry about it." But as days progressed, and I think as things got a little more challenging, it soon started becoming a problem, a lot more than we had anticipated. It first became problems within major cities, and I think Mumbai happens to be one of the worst hit, which is not really a good thing. But even Delhi and other bigger locations, other cities started showing huge numbers. And also, if you now look at the numbers across the rural areas as well, it is growing because a lot of people are traveling post the lockdown was relaxed. Now, as a result of that, it not just created an health crisis, it also created an economic crisis, which was not something that I think we would have anticipated. And anyone in the living history today, if you ask them, have you seen something like this in your past? I don't think anyone can pinpoint and say that, yep, I have seen something like this, so I know how to be prepared for this. So that's one. And I think lockdown in itself, and not just regional or local lockdowns, but lockdowns overall, has had a significant impact on the businesses. And we'll talk a little bit more through that in the next few slides. And that has resulted into unemployment, where the unemployment rates have continued to increase. And there is an estimate that over 25 million jobs could be lost worldwide as a result of COVID-19, as stated by the International Labour Organization. So, how has it impacted us? How has it impacted the business? How has it impacted us as organizations? How has it impacted people at large in terms of employment opportunities? Um, Firstly, the health hazard or health pandemic in itself caused a major disruption, uh, immediately resulting into lockdowns across the world, including in India as well, which led to temporary business closures, and a lot of economic activity that was dependent on the businesses got impacted big time, which resulted into a loss of customers due to economic slowdown. There also were in the lockdown phases a huge amount of challenge in terms of demand and supply. There were some things which were really high in demand, but no supply of it, or vice versa in some cases as well. And a lot of organizations, and including in major cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, decided that it is best to work from home. Now, but work from home was not possible for a lot of industries, a lot of manufacturing units, and that meant that they had to curtail the operations, which also resulted into lower consumption levels and decreased the overall consumption pattern over a period of 3 to 4 months. Now, that also meant that the organizations that were thriving on cash and were also trying to sell their products suddenly had to hold off their sales, hold off their production, and any loan that they had taken in the past prior to COVID scenario had to be really re-looked at, and which immediately impacted the liquidity situation. Manufacturing is now getting better, but it is no way closer to what it was in the pre-COVID environment. And it also has led to a lot of debts across the micro scale entrepreneurs. Uh, and as we speak, this has impacted people like you and me as well. And I think if I were to think about from the corporate side, a lot of industries got impacted where they had to, one, resort to layoffs, which is not the best thing to do, two, cut down on hiring or freeze the hiring, and three, also look at creative ways or tougher ways, if I were to say from an employee standpoint, to look at how do they manage their payroll and payments, and probably ask employees to take a compensation cut because they were just not able to manage the overall situation in terms of the book of business, because there was not much revenue at all that was um, happening because of the lack of economic activity. Now, positive sides of that as has been that we have really started looking at newer ways of working. Working from home has now become almost normal, and I think if you really look at the educational institutions as well, have adopted to digital learning, which probably was not as big as it is right now in the pre-COVID era. And also, it will continue to challenge the overall policies, labor law, pay structure, because a lot of the laws of the land that we are all living in today, including the taxation law, including the company's establishment, etc., have to be re-looked at, because the economic activity that used to be conducted in a specific place right now has all gone virtual, which means that now I can work from home. You can probably faculties listening to this can teach from home, and you as students can sit at home and get trained or get coached as well, which means that the economic activity completely has gone virtual for a lot of industries. Of course, manufacturing remains where it is, but again, there will be a lot of innovation that will happen in that space as well, because the world now needs to really gear up for similar, if not the same scale, similar smaller pandemics or smaller health hazards like these in the near future. And we keep hearing something or the other coming out every day from across the world, including China. So I think that's gonna continue to evolve through as we speak. So we've all heard about this term called next normal, and I think we really need to ask ourselves, okay, so what is next, and what's next, right? So I think we will look at some of these elements in from a historical perspective as well. So we've all heard this term called industrial revolution, and it's not a new term. You as students would have read about it, learned about it, but in context, if you were to really look at what we saw, and I'll just reflect upon 3.0 and 4.0 in specific. 3.0 was a journey where we all embarked upon few decades ago rather, which led to a lot of automation, computers, and electronic disruption. We were already into 4.0 even before the COVID came in, which led to cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, networks, and if you were to really look into from an India perspective, we saw 2G, 3G, 4G, the high-speed fiber-net connections happening all in the last 5 to 10 years. That resulted into a lot of disruption in the software industry, app development industry, and a lot of virtualization of work started happening as we saw through. If you would have asked anyone in the last several years, or at least more so in the last couple of years from a corporate standpoint, and asked them, what's your technology agenda? they would have said, yeah, we would plan for this maybe in 2025 or 2028, but not 2020. But ask them today in the COVID reality, they would have said, oh no, I think it's non. I mean, it's a non-negotiable right now. It's an inevitable thing. I need to do X, Y, Z right away. So the technology agenda has really come at the forefront for a lot of organization, not just within the services sector or the BPO or an ITES sector, but including manufacturing, where they now need to really reimagine the way manufacturing happens across industries. Is there a scope for robotization? Is there a scope for us to think about 3D printing where possible? Is there a scope to make things in scale yet be economically friendly? Because amidst all of this, if there is something that is a bigger worry for all of us as a human mankind, is the climate change. And I think a lot of focus will be put into elements like those, and we'll continue to see us as an industry getting disrupted, and how quickly we adapt to it will be something that we need to really look at. So, as individuals, what are some of the changes that you are seeing? So, for example, this is a view that we have continued to see evolve over the last several years, and more so in the last 5 to 8 years. Um, Jobs in the larger cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Gurgaon continue to evolve and continue to grow in the last several years. But that also led to a lot of workforce migrating from one location to the other, which is to the from tier two cities to tier one cities. But that also meant that our cities' infrastructure need to change quite a bit, which probably wasn't the case in many cities as we spoke and saw, which led to flexibility being one of the biggest demands of the workforce in today's date. So I think expectations like, can I work remotely? Can I work from home? Can I work for a number of hours, specific number of hours? I don't want to be working for 15 hours and also travel for 4 more hours going back and forth. That became a center of the overall agenda for from a talent perspective. People started looking for meaningful opportunities, meaningful experiences, and growth opportunities within their careers. Um, People expected adaptive work environment where culture was at the forefront of any conversation. So if you ask about anyone, like, why are you joining any organization? They would say, I'm joining this organization because of its work culture. And they also wanted adaptive learning systems, which means that classroom trainings were probably things of the past. I want learning on demand, probably based out of apps like Udemy, Upgrad, or anything, or LinkedIn Learnings, and probably at the click of my finger, whenever I can, I do have time, I will want to go through my learning agenda and not like dedicate myself for 2 days or 3 days or 5 days in a workshop and spend that time listening into the things that people are coaching us on, training us on. Empowerment became one of the important agendas as well, as we spoke through. Personnel development is again top agenda. Values were being looked upon with a lot more seriousness now in this generation than before. And I think from a corporate standpoint, we all saw that there was a need for us to improve our candidate experience, because the more we do towards improving candidate experience, it meant that we will have a better client experience, or an exceptional client experience in a way. So, having said about uh, the shift in the demographics, what's changing? And I think if you think about it from a overall perspective, in the world, we are seeing technology disrupting everything that we do. There is innovation happening in everything that probably can be thought about. Accessibility has been looked upon as one of the top agenda, because I think if you think about people with any form of disabilities or differently able people, they were probably not in anyone's mind until about last 5 years. But I think with digitization, the focus has been, how can I make my website more friendlier for people who could probably not hear, probably not see? How can I make my workspaces a lot more friendlier for people who come on a wheelchair, etc.? So that was happening. workplaces in itself were started becoming a lot more flexible. There was an emphasis on collaboration a lot more, and remote working had becoming more ingrained part of an employer value proposition. Workforce in itself, we saw this, started looking at diversity, probably wanted better work life balance. And of course, the demography in itself is changing. Today, we are talking about organization with workforce where there are at least 5 generations of people working together. So you would have a 20-year-old, you would have a 60-year-old, and all working together for a common cause and a purpose for the organization. And we have that ourselves within the EY framework. So that said, we saw a unique trend of independent workforce, and I'll associate this with a small story, my personal story here, where if I were to really look at my parents, my dad and my mom worked for organizations. My dad was in, and I'm basically from Mumbai. My dad was working for Automobile Products of India Limited in Bhandup, and he started his journey in API in 1964, and he stayed on till 2003, which is like 42 years of service. It was a factory based role. He was an accountant in there. My mom worked for Central Railways. She worked for 33 years in Central Railways. And when we look about their work, it meant that the work that they did was less flexible. They couldn't probably travel as much beyond the workplaces that probably we can now think about. The work that they did was also need based, and I think it was not like what they felt their passion was they could do it. It was more driven by the need of the organization, and they had to do what they were asked to do. Um, and there were very little external factors impacting the work that they did. And all that was there until about 1992 when we opened up our doors for globalization. And I think that led to a massive influx of foreign organizations coming in, which also meant that existing organizations had to really reinvent themselves. A lot of organizations couldn't do what they could have done, and ended up letting go of a lot of people through VRSs, if I were to say so. So a lot of public sector units had to let go of people at that time, and that led to a lot of such people in a situation where they had to reimagine their careers, and they really wanted to look whether this could be a turning point in their careers. So some picked up agency jobs. So someone like an LIC agency, someone did writing for their passion and career, someone did photography, and many more such part-time careers, which eventually became their full-time careers as well. All of that until 2000, when we saw a massive rush towards the Y2K. But finally, again, when the bubble bursted, we saw a lot of people not being able to take up jobs because of the challenge that the industry was going through, which also meant that organizations took a very short-term view that they couldn't afford to hire people on full time, which meant that the contracting industry started booming. And I think a lot of contracting industry that we see today started around these like the 1990s, late 90s, early 2000s, and I think they continue to grow and thrive in an economy like this. 2008 was no different with when it comes to the economic crisis that we saw. 2016, 18 with the GST implementation, demonetization, all of that from an economic impact standpoint is no different again, because every such disruption has forced us to reimagine our careers and reimagine the way we did the work. 2020 with COVID is no different again. And I think a lot of organizations who are currently struck for cash are probably not being able to really look at better ways of managing their cash flow and are resorting into hiring people on contract jobs. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I think we will reflect upon that as to why it's the turning point in each of our own careers as we speak through in the next few slides. So, is this an unwelcome disruption or a transformational opportunity? At EY, we believe in asking better questions because our purpose is to build a better working world. So, you'll keep seeing these better questions on our slides because unless and until we don't ask these questions, we will not get better answers. And if we don't get better answers, we will not be able to build a better working world. And which is why these questions are so powerful and important. Um, Having said that, how did the business model evolve? If you really look at how IT outsourcing started in the past, it was all traditional on-premise kind of roles. Then it evolved to remote infrastructure management, and today, if you look at it, we have infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service, if I were to put it across. Project management happened in a traditional legacy waterfall methodology. Today, it evolved from that to being an open source, modern, agile kind of method. With software as a service a reality today, I think everything is agile and probably offered at a click of a button. And a simple example of that would be take any app, including Microsoft Windows, if you were to look at how it was in 1990s and how it is today. I think it's the world of collaboration that we are seeing, right? I mean, if a Microsoft Word document opens up on Android app, it means it's a world of collaboration and it's a software as a service that's at play. Business process outsourcing, which we, I think, as a nation have benefited immensely from, was people based to begin with. And this is all about early 2000. It became industrialized, and people started looking at outcome based outsourcing, which means earlier, when you used to be a salaried call center agent, people started paying you for the number of calls you take, and it was still on premise though. But today, I think we see an evolution of business process as a service through a platform, and of course, a platform BPO. So you stay wherever you are, and you probably get log into this environment that the organization offers and get the work done and get paid. And I think that's what is something that we are seeing. People, or talent as we call, used to work on site, then evolved to working remotely, then started seeing outsourcing or captives or contractor management in the recent past. And of course, with the digitization that we have seen in the last several years, especially now, I think we are all sitting on cloud. And when I say cloud, it's all virtual environment that we are working through. So I'm sitting here in Bangalore and talking to you all today through a collaborative tool like Microsoft Teams. And that's possible only because of virtualization. So literally, all of us today are sitting on cloud and talking to each other. So that's how the business models have evolved. And how has that um, evolved as the business has shifted as well? So what started off as a traditional contract staffing model today has evolved into crowdsourcing or gig model. And none of these terms are something that is new. We always did crowdsourcing. And I would say Lijjat Papad is a classic example, or Amul is a classic example of crowdsourcing. But of course, they were of a different kind. Today, we talk about any work that we do that can be broken down into smaller subtasks, microservices, and micro tasks, and can be crowdsourced via a digital platform to freelancers, crowdsourcing vendors, or platforms, or communities. Excuse me, our communities at large. So I think that's what we are seeing, and how is it impacting overall work as we are seeing evolve is something that we will just quickly glance through in the next few slides. So what is gig economy? And I'm not sure how many of you have heard this term called gig economy, but it's ability of any organization or any individual to be able to work with other individuals through a platform. A classic example that we've all seen several, everything that we do today is through a platform. So be it your Uber, be it your Ola, be it your Swiggy, be it Urban Clap, all of it is a classic example of gig economy. But having said that, a lot of work that you and I do today, or probably including studies that we do today, including um, the work that I do today, is a classic recipe for me to move it to the cloud and perform it on the cloud as a freelancer or a gig worker. And I think a lot of organizations are already adopting to this. Um, uh, uh, there are a lot of players in the market who solely work on this model. Example would be Upwork, Topcoder, Kaggle, Fiverr.com, Freelancer.com, and we have something called Gignar.com that we specialize in. And I think I'll talk about that towards the end of this presentation. And I think the future of work is going to be through engaging with people through platforms like these, which probably gives me ability to hire the best talent in the best possible way at the click of a button, and it gives both organization and the freelancers the flexibility to choose the right opportunity for themselves, and all of that with no middleman in place. So I think that's what is the beauty of this economy, and I think this is just going to continue growing as we see. And how is that going to impact the way you work is something that we will just look at as well. So who is the freelancer? And ask yourself, if you were to consider becoming a freelancer yourself, what are some of the things that you need to really equip yourself with? Someone who is self-employed seeks short-term assignments, jobs, not committed to a single employer for a long term. Like I started my career in 2003, so I've probably about 17 years of experience, and I've worked in many organizations compared to my dad, who worked for one organization for 42 years. So I think we have adapted ourselves to evolve through several organizations for growth, and also look at better opportunities for experience perspective. If the same thing that you're doing for an organization and moving into the other as a freelancer to the other organization, that's nothing but being a freelancer in many ways. So can you do that is something that you need to really ask yourself. You may be able to engage with one or more company at a time, um, and you could probably also look at freelancing as a remote working option, which probably can be done not just for roles or jobs in India, but anywhere else in the world that can be orchestrated through platforms. And it's very different when it comes to comparing this with a full-time job, where it is you're dedicating yourself for 8 to 9 hours of job or 45 hours of work week. A freelancing job could be at will. So you could probably choose that you'll work 2 days in a week, 3 days in a week, and not work 4 days in a week. Or you could choose to work 6 months in a year and not work 6 months in a year, probably vacation or do something else, or pursue a passion. All up to you. I think that's the beauty of being a freelancer. And if you really look at the messaging and the need of the hour from an India as a country as well, Startup India initiative was launched in 2017, 16, 17, if I'm not wrong, which was catering to um, uh, enhance the startup ecosystem. Make in India initiative also benefited a lot through the Startup India initiative, but which gave a rise to a lot of MSMEs to go ahead and pursue their dreams and careers. If you look at what we are going through as a nation today, I think self-reliant India, as coined by our prime minister, is exactly the need of the hour. Can you become a freelancer and thereby take care of yourself, and have the freedom to do whatever you want to the scale that you think you can afford to do, is what freelancing is all about as well. So personas, I mean, you could be a hobby gig worker, goal gig worker, part-time gig worker, career gig worker. I'm not going to get into the definitions of this. I think this is for a quick view for all of you. But I think there could be anything can drive you to become a freelance or a gig worker. And I think whatever you choose, or whatever your driver is going to help you become a better one. And I think we'll also talk about how can you become a freelancer and an effective one or a better one, by doing certain things differently. Um, Few stats as we see, and I mean, I'm not. I'm certain that none of this surprises you, but if you look at the freelancing industry or the online freelancing industry, as we really look at, 50% of India's workforce by 2021 would be online freelancers, and I think none of this should surprise you. I'm just going to take a sip of water, just a moment. Excuse me. We're already largest freelancer market, believe it or not, and I think Some of these stats were really surprising to us as well when we started looking at the future of workforce. And 10 million people as freelancers is not a small number at all. Over 40% of Indian freelancers surveyed by e-payment firm like PayPal saw that their businesses have grown, especially in the last year. And I think it doesn't really surprise me because I think a lot of people have resorted into becoming freelancers themselves because that's the best thing to do in the market like this, where full-time jobs are hard to come by. And I think um, freelancing based on the skill is going to be the next big thing. If you look at benefits of a freelancing, it gives you the freedom and the flexibility. You get to choose your clients or the organizations that you work for. You have the work life balance. You get to choose when you want to work, when you don't have to work. You're not tied to one location. And I think in the current world of virtual working, you could probably be wherever you are and work for organizations across the country or even across beyond the countries. And platforms allow you to do that with ease. You can focus on health and wellness goals, and I think that was one of the biggest challenges for at least my generation of workforce when we started our careers, because a lot of our time was spent on traveling, which was probably not the best thing to be done. And you get to choose to decide on your income. No one is putting a cap on it. Like, I think there is this aspect of going through a lot of education that we go through, and that's, it's not bad, don't take me wrong when I say this, but a lot of our goals at that time when we are pursuing our MBA or graduation or post graduation is, what am I going to get as a starting salary? But that's determined by mostly the various factors within the industry. As a freelancer, you can choose what you want to earn in the year one or month one or day one. And I think you could probably make bigger as a freelancer in the longer run, when you were to really look at it from that perspective. So now that you probably have heard the freelancing world, another important or a better question is, what will be more important in the future, right skill set or right mindset? And I think if you were to look at what we just spoke about, all of that requires change of mindset as we speak about as well. Because I think a lot of us, as we really look at what we hear and whatever we have heard through our parents, um, we want a secure full-time job, or we want a job in a highly paying corporate environment, or you know what, I mean, I have to be in an organization for 3 years or 5 years, and so on. Um, if I have a degree from XYZ institution, this is what I should be able to get through. I think those are all assumptions that may probably have to be revisited in a market like these. And if I were to really look at it from a perspective of what's available, and I'm sorry for this light falling off every few minutes, I'm just going to fix it properly. And what is it that we are seeing today? And I think it would be an extremely important aspect for us to. This is not helping me today at all. I'm just going to keep it aside. Sorry about this at all. Yeah. So what is it that we need to do is something that we really need to ask ourselves, of what changes in the mindset that we need to bring in as we speak through. So just a bit of how do we make the shift? I think we've always looked at full-time jobs as something, as a biggest aspiration, but can we really look at what is in it required, or what is most relevant for being a gig worker? So understand that piece. Do your research. Look at freelancing sites that are available. Look at what's available in the market in terms of jobs. Don't do your traditional job searches, which will not really help you at all. Like, if you were to really look at how can you make an impactful career for yourself, looking at corporate websites in the traditional manner of, let's say, how do I find a job for an MBA finance, MBA HR, or an engineer in an organization like EY? Probably not the most relevant thing in today's state. You need to really ask yourself, what are the tasks that I can do? What skills do I need to do this task? And probably Google search those elements that will give you a lot more broader variety of opportunities than you would get probably through a typical traditional organization's website. And I'm not saying that you should all do it this way. Of course, this is all going to evolve as we speak through with the rise of platform economy. But I think you need to really ask yourselves, educate yourselves about what does it take to be a successful gig worker. And I think if you start now, you would be able to make a lot of sense out of this in the near future. Ensure you get a fair understanding on how do you manage your time to work from home or remotely. It's important because this is not like how corporate careers used to be even 6 months ago. And I think a lot of us are still figuring out in many ways as to what is the border or what is the boundary that I need to draw to to distinguish between my work time and my family time. And I think it's extremely important for gig workers or freelancers or entrepreneurs, if I were to say, to ask themselves, what is the boundary that I'm going to draw for myself? Have right technology in place, workspace, invest in technology like laptops, collaborative tools like Zoom, purchase the right licenses, invest like I did with this light, invest in a good light for yourself or mic for yourself, headset for yourself to ensure that the collaboration happens seamlessly. And I think it's also if you can go on mute, please, all of you. I think there is someone who has unmuted themselves. And I think it's important that you also track your income. Unlike in a full time job where you get paid salary at the end of the month, whether you work full 31 days for 9 hours a day or not, in freelancing, it's almost all about how much work did you do and what's the value you created. And you could make money on a day, you could not make money on another day, but that should not be something that discourages you. It's exactly like you looking at it from a um, any platform based roles perspective. Like think about it from a Ola or an Uber driver perspective. As to whether he makes money every day, probably not. But there could be days when he makes windfall money, which takes care of at least for the next couple of days. And I think that's the way the world will move towards as well. Budget yourselves for health insurance, which is something that we almost forget every time. We as individuals don't really pay attention to these aspects, and in challenging times like these, that what we are going through, health insurance is a must. Prioritize your work accordingly. Start connecting with influential people who can make introductions and referrals. And I'll talk about networking and importance of networking and personal branding a little bit more in detail in the next few slides, because it's important that you all understand what does it take for you to adapt yourself into the next uh, generation workforce. Um, Mindset, we saw this. I think most importantly, you got to have a commitment to work towards this, right? I mean, you can't really afford to be 1 foot here, 1 foot there, non-committal about what is it that you want to do. If you have taken up a journey of becoming a freelancer on any skill for that matter, commitment is utmost important. You got to ensure that you stay focused with your goals. Drop a goal plan. Ask yourself questions around where is it that you want to be and what is it that the money that you want to have in the next probably 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or 3 years, and work towards that. Uh, Set priorities, be productive, create an action plan with a timeline. Patience is extremely important in times like these. And I think people who have not been able to practice patience have lost golden opportunities in times like these. And I think as much as we have the FOMO aspect, which is fear of missing out issue, that we as generation today go through, practicing patience is utmost importance. So do that, and I think there is tons of material available online that you can go through to be able to see how best you can improve your patience quotient, I would say. Problem solving with yourself. At times in an organization, there are others who can help you out. Not to say that as a freelancer, you'll not get any help, but you got to really also ask yourself, in case I don't get this person to talk to today, how am I going to console myself, or how am I going to coach myself, or how am I going to motivate myself? to get the work done. And I think it's extremely important, and that probably leads you to the next point, which is being your own boss. A lot of times we as an individual working for corporates have our own bosses to take care of, to take care of everything that we do. But in a freelancing environment you have clients, so between the client and yourself there is no layer. So how can you be your own boss, be mindful, accepting, and shy away from negative thoughts? Because in an environment like these, and I think it's going to continue challenging us for the next 18 to 24 months at least till the vaccine comes through. Negativity will continue to boil the ocean in a way, which is in a negative way rather, and I would say unsubscribe all form of negative news. And I think you got to really um, push yourselves towards positivity in times like these. And I think I would say you should probably practice restraint from getting into anything to do with negative thoughts. So um, that being said, another better question: do you have the right perspective to achieve your bold ambition? And we're talking about reimagining careers, and we're talking about careers which are going to look very different, already are looking different, and will continue to look very different again and again. I think the disruption that we are seeing will continue to disrupt us in everything that we do, in a much more rapid manner than how we have seen this evolve in the last at least decades worth of experiences that we all have put together here. So reimagining careers, three principles. You got to really understand what does it take to reimagine your career, right? You need to understand what's the current situation. Can you reposition your services offerings or reposition your value proposition? I would say. I mean, ask yourself who you are, what you're good at, what can you do to uh, position yourself as an independent worker, freelancer, gig worker, or even an this applies even as if you were to get to an interview tomorrow and talk to your interviewing panel. What are you good at? What are you good at is a far broader question than merely saying that, yeah, I have done this as part of my course wherever I did. It's a lot more deeper than that. So really ask yourself who you are, what you're good at, why do you do what you do? And I think you need to have your quick 30-second, 1 minute elevator pitch to be able to position yourself. Uh, Solve problems in the right way. And I think a lot of times we are trying to look at solving problem in a wrong way, or not so right way, I would say, because we lack the perspective. So enhancing perspective is extremely important. Read up a lot, understand what's happening, why things are changing, what is it that you need to do differently to be able to offer the organization or the clients the services that you should or you're good at offering. Reinvent, focus on the right skills. The world of work in the future is going to heavily rely on skills, and we'll talk a little bit more about the skills in the next few slides. But how good you are in a particular skill is something that you really need to know, and really need to position yourself with that. Being relevant is again very important. Reinforce, as a third R, which means careers post COVID-19 would look very different and would require us to reinforce the reimagine and reinvent a lot more. And I think you need to also look at what can be done digitally. And I think today, if you were to ask, having a no digital footprint is like not good at all, right? And I think platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, crowdsourcing platforms like Gig Now, Upwork, Topcoder, these are the places where you need to be, without even anyone asking you to sign up on these platforms. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Your digital presence is a non-negotiable in an environment like these. How can you be relevant? This is not business as usual. This has evolved. This has disrupted. Though it's a temporary situation, it could probably be the game changer situation for us as well. So the traditional ways of working, workplace, worker requires a reimagination. That's what we discussed. Remote working, virtual working, gig contracts, freelancing will be the new normal, and we are seeing that already happening. Preparation for a disruption of this scale is essential, right? as I said, we may see something similar happening in the next 3 years, 5 years. What do we do to be able to have a plan B in place or a backup in place? Caring, listening, empathy are the three most important things for you to be able to be successful in the future work. And I think the more you practice this, I think the more successful you will become. Physical and mental well-being in times like these are extremely important, and even if it was not times like these, it's important any which ways. Practicing financial prudence is the need of the hour, and I think we had forgotten that piece in the last few decades. I mean, if I were to recollect my parents telling me about how they survived through the 70s and 80s, and how we have been very picky and choosy about everything that we do, we are spoiled for choices. And at times it's a good thing, because capitalism is a great thing and it allows a lot of people to grow, but also at times we end up buying things which or subscribing to things that we probably don't need. And I think practicing financial prudence is utmost important in times like these, and even going forward as we see through. So a bit about personal branding that I spoke about. I think in a world that is so digitally connected, it's extremely important that you build a personal brand for yourself. And when I say brand, in the old ways of working, probably when we could see people, talk to them, shake their hands, the personal brand looks slightly different. But in a digital world, I think it's all about your social media presence, how you manage your credibility, how good you communicate, what's your image on the platforms or with the work that you've done, body language, are you being very stiff, are you being flexible, and how are you able to manage unpredictable or difficult situations? And these will determine your personal brand. And I think you need to really look at asking these questions to yourselves and reflecting upon these elements to build an effective personal brand for your career. And why is it important? Because most of the organization today look at these in terms of their screening elements. 50% of organization want to ensure that the candidate has a professional online persona. So don't go ahead and put anything which is negative in nature about anything to do with anything that you see in the public domain that could probably not be appreciated by your clients or your customers or your organizations that would eventually hire you. um, a lot of organization today sees, and forget organizations, even immigration authorities or tax authorities see what you're posting online. I think there was also a interesting joke where someone, and this was I think a couple of years ago, someone really put their income on their form 16 or their tax return as less than 5 lakh rupees, and posted a picture on Facebook of a Rolls Royce car that they bought. And I think the tax authorities caught it, and probably this guy got questioned as well. So I think extremely connected world is what we are going to go through, and everything that we do is going to get tracked. Now you may argue, is this infringement of my privacy? Uh, am I giving in too much about my personal details? But I think that's what digital economy or digital world is all about. And I think it's probably a one-way street in many ways, but also we got to really get creative, careful about how we want to position ourselves, and how the world looks at us as well in the near future. So we talk about future skills, and future is now. So critical thinking, analytical reasoning, EI, adaptive thinking, cross-cultural competency, computational thinking, technology literacy, design mindset, transdisciplinary skills, and virtual collaboration. I don't think any of these words would have had the importance that it has today 6 months ago. And I think I don't need to explain or define any of these, because you're all understanding as we go through times like these as to what each one of these mean as well. So if I were to really say anything at all, I would say adapt quicker, and adopt the mindset to be able to succeed in an environment like these. Um, careers in the post-COVID world would focus on your personal brand. So you really need to really look at how you are winning assignments, working for organizations, what organization thinks about you, talks about you, what the brand element speaks about you. Learn a new skill. Merely having degrees don't mean anything today. I think you need to really ask yourself, what upskilling can I do? What micro skilling can I do? I think if I were to talk a little bit about micro skilling, think about an automobile manufacturing sector, and the element of, let's say, Maruti or an Hyundai as an example. It has several components that is manufactured by the OEM, and an MRF or an Apollo can go and install a tire for any car for that matter. They have their own unique, distinct identities, and they continue to work towards making a best-in-class product. uh, each organization requires a different level of skill set, right? I mean, each work that we do requires a different level of skill set. Tire making in itself is a micro skill. So if you really look at the world of work that we are gonna gonna see, uh, you got to have a mindset of knowing it all. So you need to have a mindset of knowing 1 inch deep and 1 mile wide worth of knowledge. And that means you need to know it all, but also need to know something really important, a lot more deeper in the subject. So skills like data skills, digital skills, data visualization are just few examples that you can really upskill yourself in. Embrace and champion virtual working model. Prepare digital strategy, including remote working. Revisit the long forgotten project that you can really look at. Promote yourself and your personal brand more online. Rethink career discovery or career recovery strategies, or career discovery strategies as well, and have a 3, 6, and 9 month strategy in essence for the next few months as you all embark upon your journey towards the next generation workforce. We spoke about the digital footprint. I'm going to skip this. A bit about Gig Now. So we in EY have a program called Gig Now. What we do here in this space is provide opportunities to talent available at large in India, various contracting, small, short-term internship as well as gig opportunities. Where one of the prerequisites, of course, is to go and sign up on www.gignow.com. This program allows any individual access to best-in-class work, best-in-class benefits, and this is a site I'll walk you through what comes with it. You can have your own identity or a distinctive identity. You can continue to earn at par with anyone doing that role as a full-timer. You get insurance benefits. You get access to best-in-class learning. We have something called as our on our platform, access to learning maps, where you get unlimited learning through Udemy or any of our partners that provide us with content. And of course, all of this while you can also think about giving back to the society through our Ripples initiatives. So I think the world is moving towards a hybrid workforce model, of which gig working will be an integral element. It's important for all of you to be open and adaptive to the model of working that we just saw, and that will ensure you become successful a lot more quicker in a way how quickly you can adapt. And that brings an end to my presentation. So I would now be open to take in any questions that you may have. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Gopal, for that really insightful sessions. I would now request the students to raise their hands, and I'll be announcing, yeah, taking them. Okay. Shamant, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Shamant here.
Hey,
Uh,
Shaman.
Thank you for sharing your insights. So, you explained gig economy from the perspective of the freelancers. However, from the employer's perspective, there are apprehensions that a large gig workforce may have issues such as consistency in services being delivered, intricacies in legal rights of innovation by gig workers, and efficacies in the execution of long term projects. which involve a large gig force. So how can such concerns be addressed while adopting a gig model, sir?
So, as I said, I closed my presentation with something called as hybrid workforce model, isn't it? And when I say the future of work is hybrid, which means you would have full-time jobs and you would also have part-time workers in the organization. So the proportion today may be 95 to 5 or 98 to 2, in depending on how organization has adopted to it. It will continue to evolve. So the organizations who have adopted to this model of working will have benefits in itself, and that will far outweigh some of the aspects that you have just mentioned. Um, think about it from a perspective that if you are in a digital world, you spoke about data privacy or intellectual property rights or innovation as you outlined. Um, I think as an organization or as an ecosystem evolves, there will be laws, there will be checks and balances that will be put in place to ensure that this gets taken care of. The second element that the organization really thinks about is lack of availability of talent. Now, if I were to say lack of availability of talent is not a concern at all in the digital world, because you now have access to high quality talent at the click of a button. So think about this as how you used to call a Meru cab 10 years ago versus how you book your cab today on Uber and Ola. If one guy cancels a cab, the probability of you getting a Meru cab 10 years ago was probably next to nil, and you had to take an auto rickshaw wherever you had to go. At least in a city like Mumbai, that's easy. In Bangalore, probably that's not an option as well. But if you think about a world today, if one person cancels, you still could go ahead and book the cab through someone else. And it's the abundance of talent that will be available on the digital platform that will continue to help alleviate a lot of concerns that the organizations have today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Shamant. We have Saurabh with us. Saurabh.
Good evening, sir. So this is Saurabh. So, sir, my
Yes, Saurabh.
question is, uh, as we get after we get a medical breakthrough for COVID, people will like start gradually start returning to their workplace, and people will have like more flexibility in the mix of work from home and work from office. So this will surely bring a change in the office dynamics. So,
Correct.
do you think we will be seeing a more collaborative working hours in office and focusing on more personal productivity remotely?
So a lot of it depends on how the organization adopts to it. Industries that are conducive for remote working have probably started reaping the benefits of this. So we at EY went 100% remote working on 13th of March, probably a week before the lockdown was announced. And even before the lockdown, we were remote working 3 days or 2 days a week at least in many of our businesses. So I think that does put into as perspective that organizations that have given value to uh, personal productivity have seen very little impact in times like these, where it was very difficult for a lot of organizations who didn't. So, for example, banks took a big beating, manufacturing organizations took a big beating. A lot of such sectors who haven't adopted to remote working will have to reimagine themselves and their ability to get the work done in the next normal. Whereas organizations who have been digital even pre-COVID probably will see very little impact. So I think it depends on where you are at that point of time.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So I see 13 more questions. I see Karthik, you have raised your hand. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for finding time out for us. So my question is that work culture is a big part in any organization. Like a lot of focus is laid on it. So we check for people who are a good fit culturally for the organization. So how is that taken care of? Like if we are hiring gig workers?
So I'll give you two perspectives to this, and I think you would appreciate that as well. If you think about it from a organizational standpoint. Organizations tomorrow or today as well need to adopt and adapt to hybrid workforce models, which means I need to make my workplace inclusive in nature. I cannot make it exclusive. I cannot only look at a specific set of experiences. So today, if you look at most of the top Fortune 500 organizations, they're all inclusive organizations. So they have the best in class diversity ratios between male and female. They ensure that they make their office spaces and the work that they do inclusive in terms of making people with disabilities, neurodiversities, all of that more included as part of the workforce. There is pay parity between the different gender of workforces as well. And with the rise of hybrid workforce model, you will start seeing work, organizations having to adopt a model that ensures that the organization has appetite, tolerance, processes in place to be able to take care of all kind of workers today. So that's from an organizational standpoint. So we all need to do our bit to be able to adapt to the next generation workforce model, right? So that's one side of um, the story where the culture will evolve, which will be a lot more inclusive than what it is. Now think about it from a gig worker perspective. Now, if you were to work in five different organizations, maybe one after the other, you will probably create a very unique proposition for yourself of having worked in different industries yet managed your own unique distinctive identity. You will be able to bring in a lot more value to the organization through the unique identity that you have. And I think if you think about this, a parallel that I can draw is think about Uber drivers today. What is it that they care for? They care about their credibility ratings, isn't it? At the end of every drive, every ride, they would ask, "Sir, मुझे 5 rating दे देना." Why is that important? It is because it gives the individual a visibility to his own performance, and me as a ride user, a view to how this person has been with all his prior customers that he's driven in digital world. And if you were to go to any of the crowdsourcing platforms, your ability to find more projects would depend on your own credibility, and your credibility will be factor of how good you are in terms of your work ethic, how quick you are in terms of your delivery, how good you are in terms of your deliverable in terms of the right pricing, right quality, and that determines your credibility. And if you build a credibility which is strong enough, I think you bring in a very unique combination of working for an organization which also has a great credibility. So you will not pick up organizations which has a poor credibility score because you would have rated, or others would have rated, saying that, hey, this is not a great organization to work for, and vice versa would also happen. Like if you today go to Glassdoor, that's exactly what happens, isn't it? If you get an offer, you go to Glassdoor and check how good is this organization, is it worth picking up or not? That's exactly how we as employers will also start looking at getting people. And I think when there is a match, you will start seeing magic happening.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Karthik. Indrila, please go ahead.
Uh, Good evening, sir. Am I
Yep.
audible?
Yes, you are.
So my question is to you is like a large sector of India is not having the access of proper remote system or something. So in that situation, they might be highly talented as well. So how the organizations are planning to take them within the organization, given that they are highly talented, but the situation at their place is not proper enough, maybe.
So I would say it's an evolution, isn't it? Like if you were to ask this question, if you would have asked this question 5 years ago, uh, or 10 years ago, my answer would have been no different than what it is today, and it would be no different 5 years later as well. Technology and the way we work continues to evolve and improve day in day out. Right? The kind of opportunities that is made available today to people is better than what was made available to people yesterday. If you think about infrastructure as a problem, I don't. While I do agree to what you just said, but I don't agree to it in a way that it is still better than many other places or many other possibilities. Just imagine this. If COVID would have happened 5 years ago, would we be sitting and having this conversation this manner? The answer is no. We would have not had internet connections as fast as it is today. We would not have had Zoom. We would not have Microsoft Teams. We would not have digital platforms to be able to. We probably did not have Windows 365, Office 365, and all of that, right? So I think it is in hindsight, it is always a better thing to have happened. So I would say look at it positively to say, okay, within the opportunities and or within the constraints that I have, what is the best that I can do? Ask yourself, have you made the best utilization of the current challenges that we have gone through? I'm sure each one of you will find a lot more aspects to reflect upon. So if you have a phone today, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all are thriving on the fact that each one in India at least has at least one or more phones with a data connection. Today, no one bothers about whether the movie is getting released in a theater or not. They're still making money through the OTT platforms, isn't it? So I think look at every such situation as an opportunity and look at what you can do best with the opportunity that you have. And I'm sure you will be able to find a lot more meaning in it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vishal, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the session. So my question is that, like, when talking about gig economy, like there are lots of jobs that actually like involves a bit of risk, certain degree of risk, like audit services, the financial advisory services. So how do you manage or mitigate the risk with a gig economy? Like, because enforcing accountability is a bit different from a regular employee.
Sure. So I would humbly disagree to what you just said. At the end of the day, we are all human beings, and I think if we really look at ourselves as individuals with a specific set of values and work ethic, if you are a gig worker or if you are a full timer, I don't think that changes at all, right? So that's point number one. As human beings, if I have to do well, I will do well in any environment. If as a human being I have to cheat, I can cheat even as an FTE or a full timer, right? So that's point number one. The second point about the risk element, risk exists in anything and everything that we do. It is no different. The risk appetite or a risk profile doesn't differ between a gig worker and a full timer. I think as organizations, we really need to work towards improving and putting the right checks and balances in place. And as gig workers, as I just I think told Karthik as well earlier about credibility, the more we work towards our own personal credibility, if that were to decide my future, I would rather want to ensure that I maintain a really high integrity standards, because I know if I make one mistake, my career is finished. I may not be able to get job even as a full timer in the near future. So I would ensure that I would take care of everything with utmost integrity and the credibility that I practice. And I think it works well for all of us. And I think that's how the world will move.
Thank you.
Shubham, please go ahead.
Uh, Good evening, sir. First of all, thank you for such an insightful session. So my question was, currently we are seeing platforms like Gig Now being incorporated or applicable for the white collar workforce, and we are seeing that Urban Clap is trying to bring up the blue collar workforce in urban areas. But with increasing technology, we will see more and more labor intensive industries getting automated. So how can we ensure that the blue collar workforce in rural areas or in manufacturing sector being incorporated into such a platform like Jig Now?
So I think think about this. I think you would. It's not this versus that, right? I mean, it's every organization moving forward will have a platform of their own, and I think uh, the war of talent will be between uh, one platform versus another, and who gets access to the talent and makes the offer the first, right? So that's one. I don't think there will be convergence, at least in the next few years, immediate next few years, of blue collar and white collar jobs being in a singular platform, because the world will move towards a service catalog based approach. um, if you go to Amazon today, what do you see is a service catalog, isn't it? You go to Amazon.com, you see service catalogs like books, electronics, television, blah blah blah. And each service catalog you click, you get into the specifics of what comes in that service catalog, and then you get to the products as an aspect. You can't go and book an Uber cab on Amazon.com, isn't it? And vice versa. You can't go to Uber and ask for Amazon based products. Convergence happens, but again, there needs to be commonality. So, for example, Uber did Uber Eats, which means they took over an organization and did Uber Eats as well. But that was because both the business models remained very similar. Business models will drive app-based crowdsourcing and not the other way around, right? So, if a business, there is a way for me to kind of come together, I think uh, there will be commonalities across platforms like Gig Now and other equivalent in the white collar space, while there could be similar commonalities between the blue collar jobs as well. Now, the answer of talent problem in the rural areas, I think the digital divide that exists will continue to enhance and improve with 4G and broad high speed fiber net being accessible to people at large in the rural India as well. And I think you will start seeing the benefits of that in the near future. And I think one of the biggest things that has happened for us is the fact that we are all internet connected, at least at a village level. It may not be high speed internet, but at least some form of internet, because we have ATMs and Aadhaar accessibility across even the remotest location in India. And I think that will just continue to improve. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think Mohit has a question. Mohit.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the insightful session. Like traditional working environment still exists in like MSME sectors. Can we expect change in these sectors as because they are not usually, changes are usually pretty slow over there. So when can we expect it? And if we expect it, how efficient is it going to be over
I wish I had a crystal ball. So I would say it's gonna be an aspect of fastest finger first or first mover advantage. Organizations that adapt quicker to the digital ways of working will reap benefits faster as well. I think government is doing quite a bit in this space of improving and enhancing the MSME sector, because they were in a way the worst hit in the current situation. But again, a lot of it is also driven by two factors. One is, of course, do I have the appetite to be able to do what I need to do? Some just probably don't have that aspiration and ambition to be able to come out of the situation. And of course, the other aspect is, do I have the access to be able to do what I need to do? So accessibility meaning, do I have access to loans? Do I have access to education? Do I have access to support, knowledge? And I think if I were to say one piece of advice would be to keep being curious, ask yourself, seek help. Um, and I've been coaching a lot of my friends who have been on the entrepreneurial journey, and this is exactly what I tell them as well. If you were to live in a room, and of course we are all locked down, if you were to live in a room and not talk to anyone, that's not going to help you win clients. So you got to be in the sight of the client, even if it is virtually. So I think it's a complex problem, but I think whoever does blink first and take the right steps towards their own betterment will succeed.
there? Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Nipun.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
So thank you for a wonderful session, sir. So my question was that in India, even now, we covet a government job or with COVID stability. So although there has been an increase in the in the gig economy and gig workers, how do you see a cultural transformation happening in the Indian economy so that we accept this uh, more easily?
So change should happen within, isn't it? I mean, it's an individual's perspective at the end of the day of what he or she wants to achieve. So people will continue to go to what they have been coached to or taught to look towards. But imagine this, and this is what I ask every individual who has similar perspectives like yourselves. What if there were no full-time jobs? What if there were no government jobs? What if there were no traditional ways of working? And if this was the only way of working, uh, would you still have the same reservations, or you would still have the same affinity towards all of the aspects that you just mentioned? And the reason why I ask this question is, I'm not saying that the full-time jobs are going to go away. I'm not saying that the government jobs are not going to remain. In many ways, by looking at what you were looking at, you're limiting yourself. You're limiting yourself from the potential and the possibility that exists for you to grow and take it much beyond than what you could have taken by being a government servant or an full-time worker in an organization. So I think the more you have an entrepreneurial mindset, having an entrepreneurial mindset doesn't mean that you are an entrepreneur. You could be an entrepreneurial, have an entrepreneurial mindset even as a full-time worker, but have an entrepreneurial mindset. Be more open to take risks, be more adaptive, be more agile, and be more open to experiences a lot more beyond the traditional ways of working. Because India, with the demography that we have a huge dividend in terms of us being able to make this bigger. And I think the more we are open towards this, better it is for us. So that I think the aspiration for all of us as a nation is to become the best one. And I think this is the only way to do that.
Thank you, sir. Karan, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. So first of all,
Yeah.
thank you so much for a very engaging and informative session. So my question was from an HR standpoint. Is there a
Yes.
difference in the performance measurement metric for a full-time employee and a gig employee? And if there is, then what are those?
So I would say eventually we will all evolve to the credibility score based performance rating, isn't it? I mean, if I were to, like, if I imagine this, I mean, if you're a full time worker, if you're working really well for the entire year, and at the end of the year, if I'm going to tell you, hey, you know what, you just manage the expectations, you're not going to like it. And a lot of organizations today are moving towards a lot more agile performance management methodology where the focus is given on ongoing conversations, instant feedback, instant may not be rating, but instant view of how well did you do in a particular project. And in gig, that happens any which ways through platform. So I think most of the organization who will adapt or embrace digital will embed this as part of their performance culture in the future. So it's going to work in the favor of individuals.
All right, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vandana, please ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the talk. My question is, how difficult would it be for the organization, especially for the HR department, to handle and keep a track of all the incoming and outgoing freelancer employees if we definitely move towards the gig economy, and how could it be handled in the future?
So where we are today is probably where my parents were when they had to manage accounts on ledgers. Do you all remember that? I mean, I don't know if you would have seen that, but ask your parents, they would say they would have these big ledgers in terms of writing their debit, what comes in, credit was goes out, and maintain their trial balances and all of that. In and when computers came in at that point of time, how did we adapt to that is something that we need to look at as a learning. And of course, in the current scheme of things, how we adapted from computers to laptops, and laptops to the digital mobile technology and the app-based versions of working. So it's about adaptation and adaptation, I would say, Vandana. Organizations need to adapt to digital. You cannot do gig economy on a ledger book. If I were to draw a parallel, you cannot write everyone who comes in into a piece of paper or a book and maintain a track record like how you would do in the olden days. You need to have a strong ERP tool, a software platform like how we have Gig now, and it's only that way that you will be able to managing the gig workforce.
Thank you, sir.
We have a question from Shubham Agarwal.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. So my question is that with the majority of workforce being either gig or working remotely, how does an organization will proceed forward in inculcating its values and grooming the people for their leadership positions? And in turn, how will those positions be selected after we have a limited pool of employees who are permanent?
Well, I didn't say there will be limited pool of people. uh, I think I answered this question partially in one of the earlier responses, but the broader sentiment that I want all of us to really walk away today with is um, culture will be defined, values will be inculcated. That's not an issue at all because it's the commonality that we really need to work towards in terms of having the right set of values, integrity, ethics, confidentiality, conformance to intellectual property rights, and all of that. And at the same time, be one of the best potential gig workers that you work with. Now, having said that, leadership positions. Now, there are two ways to look at it. If you were to consider yourself as a gig worker for a moment, you're a CEO of the organization that you run already. What further do you want to grow? So, I mean, if you are a CEO of your own firm, I think you're already a leader. So, I think then it's about how you want to upskill yourself to become a better leader day in day out with the experiences that you gain. If you're working in an organization where you have gig workers, I don't think gig workers or hybrid workforce or or full 100% full timers or having full gig working model is going to have any impact at the end of the day on whether you as an individual were to grow or not, because any organization for that matter focuses on outcome. Are you as a leader able to deliver this work product or not? If you as a leader with whatever team composition you have are able to deliver the work in the best possible manner, you're a great leader any which ways, and you will take any number of years or X number of years or as less number of years to be able to grow to the next level. So, and that's what gig workers do as well, right? I mean, my focus is what do I do to give the best value to my client. So focus on the outcome with whatever you do as a freelancer or a full-time worker, and I think you should be able to do well and grow well in your career.
Thank you.
Rohit, please go ahead.
Indeed, sir. Thank you for the session. So
You
my
may have to
question,
be a little louder, Rohit.
am I audible right now, sir?
Maybe take the mic a little closer to your mouth.
Hello, right now, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
So sir, my question was on the lines of how do you think would the willingness of an organization will vary when they are hiring gig workers along the lines of different management? Would they be still willing to hire a gig worker in the position of a, let's say, general manager or above that levels?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, so let's not misunderstand gig workers as someone who are in the bottom of pyramid roles. In EY at least, I have a gig worker who is in the staff role, and I have a gig worker who is in the director position as well. Gig working is not to be misunderstood with a particular level of working. You can be a CEO. I mean, I would encourage all of you to go and research this. Gig CEO or gig CHRO is the next big thing that's happening in in the Western countries, especially, there is this new phenomenon where people know that CEOs or CHROs or CFOs have tasks cut out for 2 years or 3 years at max for an organization. Their job is to come into an organization, transform the organization, take it to the next level, and move on. Now, if they have only 3 years worth of work, why do we need to hire someone at a CEO level? I would hire a CEO who is a gig worker, give him a project, give him a deadline, give him an outcome, and pay him for the outcomes that he's gonna drive. And I think very soon in India also, I mean, we already have it. It's not that we don't. We already are working with a philosophy where gig workers can be in any level, folks. Just understand that. I mean, it's not to be looked down upon. That, don't make that mistake at all. I think gig workers who know what gig working is are extremely proud of who they are, because it gives them the complete autonomy to be the CEO of their own organizations, and probably even some of the other organizations.
Thank you, sir.
We have two more questions, sir. Thank you for patiently answering them.
Sure.
Pushpak, please go ahead.
Very good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful session. My question was, do initiative like EY Ripples, do you see a vision towards developing the next generation or the upcoming generation of gig economy workers?
We're already doing that, and I think initiatives like these are steps towards that, isn't it? I mean, if I were to just sit and do higher gig working and not talk to you all, I'm not doing any service to anyone at all, right? I mean, so as part of the EY Ripples initiative, our goal is to talk to academias, including rural academias, academic institutions, schools, to be able to create a workforce model that is designed for future. And we'll continue to do that. And I would encourage each one of you to really take away learnings from this session today and continue to spread the word. India needs a lot of self-reliant individuals, gig workers, startup entrepreneurs, and our economy will thrive only with future stars like yourselves. So continue spreading the word and adopt this way of model of working.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Santosh.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for your time. I believe collaborating and working together is crucial for a team success. Relationships are built over time and they adapt to each other and hence perform more efficiently. But in a gig ecosystem, how can such relationships be forged when the workforce is continuously changing, and how would this affect the team dynamics?
I wouldn't say it's a gig workforce issue. I would say it's the adaptation element. So, for example, I'm not sure how this would have worked. Imagine me in IIT Mumbai today and delivering the speech or the content that I just delivered. The level of engagement, I don't know how effective it would have been, but I see still 175 people attending this. Probably the topic was interesting. Probably what you got to learn was interesting. Engagement continued, and I think it's not to do with the gig working model or not. It's about how you're engaging with someone. Virtual working is not new for a lot of us. I mean, a lot new rather for a lot of us. And it will while it is uncomfortable to a lot of people who are not used to virtual working, virtual teaching, virtual listening, it will be probably one of the majority ways to be able to get the work done. So I would say it's our own assumptions that we need to really challenge in a way that this is about gig working. This is not. If virtual working is going to be 100% across all the industries, barring few like manufacturing and few others, and if this is going to be the new normal or next normal, we will find our ways to be better engaged. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as a barrier at all.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'll quickly summarize the session for our students here. So I think we began the conversation with the introduction of COVID-19 pandemic and the immediate effect on the businesses, the employers and the employee. You spoke about the next normal and how the beginning of this had started with the advent of Industry 4.0, shifting in the workforce environment, adaptive learning systems, and improvement in candidate work experience came along with the process. The pavement for gig economy had started, and economic crisis played a major role in freelancing and gig works. We looked at the different business models with evolution of virtualization and change from contract stuffing to crowdsourcing. Sir walked us through the concepts of freelancing, the market scope, and the benefits of freelancing. And finally, we ended the discussion by talking about personal branding, technology literacy, and critical thinking. I would like to again thank Sir for taking the time from his schedule and speaking to all of us today. With this, we are coming to an end for today's Diksha session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, IIT Mumbai and SJ Mehta School of Management. Appreciate the opportunity, and I really hope each one of you uh, continue to do well in your careers. I would encourage you all to sign up on gigna.com. Some great opportunities are there for you to look for. And I'm available on LinkedIn as well. Some of you may have already added me. If you haven't, you can send me a connection request. I will add you all, and let's stay connected. It's an extremely challenging times that we are going through, but I'm sure this will be. I mean, humanity has been good enough and big enough for us to pass through all these challenges, and we will survive through and come out of this challenge as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. I think the students can kindly stay back a bit. You can
Sure.
drop off.
I will drop off. Yeah. I will reach out to Rohit to take the recording aspects of it. Yep. All right. Thank you.